Hey, it's Sean, founder of StartupFreedom.com. In today's entrepreneur interview, we're talking with Ben Lerer, founder of Thrillist.com. Ben started out in the hotel industry. He was just working a job. Him and his friends loved planning social gatherings. So they'd set these elaborate evenings where they'd visit this restaurant and then go to this bar or this club. And they'd always be introducing new cool things to their friends out in their city of New York. And so they figured, why don't we do this for the whole city? And eventually, why don't we do this for other cities as well? So they created a newsletter called Thrillist, which recommends the coolest and most unique things in the city for guys to do. Guys only. Thrillist, a couple years later now, is set to do over $10 million in revenue this year, and it is the newsletter that a lot of other companies are looking up to in the industry. They just passed the 2 million subscriber mark. And so I really wanted to get together with Ben and just talk about how he got started out. He's a really interesting guy, he's full of a lot of energy, and I'm looking forward to asking him about the first steps of him starting out and how he grew his business up to what it is today. Hey Ben, you there?
Yep, thanks for that awesome intro.
I'm really excited to have you here. I'm glad we finally got this done.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. I'm sorry this was a little bit of a difficult one to get booked, but that's my fault.
You know what? It's going to be worth it, though. It's going to be worth it. Don't worry about it. My fault as well. So maybe just quickly give the story of how you started up and got to where you are today. I talked about your accomplishments before. Maybe tell me your story. Did you go to college? Where'd you come from?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I did go to college. Yes, I grew up in New York and went to college in Philadelphia at UPenn. Graduated in 2003. Moved back to Manhattan after college and first went to go work in hotel sort of management and hotel operations for a guy named Andre Balazs who does boutique hotel stuff. And having a blast. It was fun, but it was ultimately not the long-term thing for me, I guess, because what me and a buddy found was sort of this hole, we thought, between local and national media. So on the local level, we read a bunch of city guides that did a really bad job sort of speaking directly to us, we thought. We loved that the content was local and actionable and timely, but we were really frustrated that there wasn't a voice that was speaking our language, that my mom and I were supposed to get the same information from like a magazine. And at the same time, we went and we looked at like the national men's mags, like the GQs and the Esquires and all that, all that stuff, and recognized that we loved that voice and we trusted the content, but we were super frustrated that it wasn't local, like the actual stuff that they were covering wasn't relevant. It wasn't local, it wasn't timely, it wasn't actionable. And we sort of figured that if we took a voice that we trusted and covered content that we cared about, we'd be in good shape. So that's what we did. So we started sending out emails to friends and family in late 2005, sort of covering cool stuff in New York, and it started working and we went from there.
Sweet. So it sounds like before you were really into going out, you were really into finding new places, and you took that passion and you turned it into a business.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, we recognized very early on we had a bunch of sort of like get rich quick scheme ideas and realized that the one common thread, and the one common thread between all of them was that we had no idea what we were doing, like none. And so we sort of stepped back and said, well, look, if we're going to create something, let's at least start in a space that we have some familiarity with. And we recognized that the only thing that we really knew how to do was have a good time, was, eat well and drink and go out and screw around and like be degenerates. And we sort of took that extreme talent and sort of turned it into a company, which was something, which would sort of help other people facilitate living a similar sort of fun lifestyle.
Yeah, it makes sense. So you have this idea with you and your buddies, and what's the first step you took to actually make it happen?
At first, we just started talking to friends and family who we thought would be sort of a good litmus test to tell us if they even liked the idea. And really early on, we got a bunch of like sort of positive feedback, which wasn't actually all that valuable because the feedback was, cool, you guys are smart, go do it, good luck. And we're like, okay, cool, thanks. And we actually got one piece of feedback from a guy who sort of laughed us out of his house and said, look, who cares that you have an idea, like go do something and stop wasting people's time by telling them that like you thought of some like idea for a company.
Yeah.
And basically we took that and, granted it wasn't like exactly what we wanted to hear, but the idea that we were told that like if you really want to go do something, then you actually have to go and physically do it, was the kick in the butt that we needed to go and actually start creating content and hustling and taking those early first steps towards actually building something.
Yeah, and so you never started a business before, right? So how did you know what steps to take? Like, what were the first couple steps you took?
Well, I mean, frankly, we didn't. And looking back, we would have probably done a lot of things differently. I mean, we were very, our first step was to try and understand the content, which I do think was the right step. And so what that meant was we started going out and, reading everything in the space, reading all the city guides in New York, all the men's mags, and seeing what we liked, and then taking the elements of the things that we liked and trying to fill in the holes where we thought we weren't getting the right kind of content. And so we were reading the city guides and trying to apply a sort of a men's voice to it. And also we started going and sort of focusing and finding that the stuff that we liked from the city guides was the really actionable, timely stuff. The article about the new restaurant, the itinerary suggesting things to actually go and physically sort of get you out of your house. And so we wanted to start, we used that as sort of our foothold, and we actually went and started going out and having fun and going, and we'd like map out a neighborhood and highlight like 30 bars that we like thought sounded cool, taking information from all these different city guides and magazines, and then we'd create an itinerary and go out and basically do a night and like take notes on all the places. And like, the first place we take like really good, deep, thorough notes about like the ambiance. Like by the last place, there'd be like a little puddle of spit on the page from like where we fell asleep. But it was, it was really it was just a lot of fun, and we did that, and we started exploring, and we started recognizing that like there were common characteristics that places that we liked and businesses that we thought were cool had, and we started to sort of seek out more places like that, and ultimately started sending out content, started sending out emails to friends and family, picking the winners and highlighting the things that we liked, and people liked discovering new things and started sending those emails around to friends, and suddenly we had more and more people signing up for this email.
That's awesome. The content was so good that it started just growing by itself.
Yeah, that was the idea. The idea was the content had to be so good. And we went out, we raised a little bit of money from a venture firm probably 6 months after we started writing the first articles, because when we were able to go and raise the money by going and showing them sort of, the chart that showed our organic growth, naturally people signing up and our audience growing from people just passing it along. And we also had validation from the businesses that we covered. So there'd be a new restaurant, or there'd be a new service or a clothing store, and we would have quotes from the owners of those establishments saying, you guys wrote about my barbecue place, and we got 100 phone calls that day. And so we knew that we had, even with a very small audience, it was heading in the right direction, and that it was growing. And more importantly, we had people were actually taking the suggestions and acting on them.
Yeah, and the businesses were getting value because of it. Makes sense.
Exactly. And so we used as sort of like the jumping off point.
Yeah. So you seem like more of a talker than a writer, and I'm sure your degenerate friends don't, aren't the best writers as well. So was that the first person you went on hired, was a writer? How'd you go about creating the content?
It actually was. The first person we brought on was a writer who's still with us today, who's, it's sort of like one of those ridiculous lucky situations where you the first guy you meet happens to be the most talented writer in the history of the universe. I mean, like, he's unbelievable. His name is David Blend, and he's been here since day one and really just sort of was the voice for a really long time. And as the company has grown, though, my business partner, Adam, has really grown into being a great writer, and even more so a great editor, in that he really understands what it's supposed to look like. And he's good at helping other people understand how to sort of make the content come to life, and I can't do that. Like, I'm a really terrible editor. I try to edit someone, and like, I'm really good at just saying bad, but I'm really, really not good at saying
the feedback,
giving feedback. And so Adam has grown into a really spectacular editor, and Dave as well, who was our first writer, has like, we've built sort of like a culture on the editorial team about quality and what the voice is supposed to sound like.
And that it sounds like that's why you're so popular, because of that voice, because of that quality.
Absolutely. The quality of the content is that's it. There's no, like, the secret sauce is creating great content.